The Philadelphia 76ers have to trade Ben Simmons already. Let's get into this. When the Philadelphia 76ers were able to draft both Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, a lot of fans around the NBA were very excited to see how well these guys could play together. Both of these guys coming into the league had very high hopes for them, and both of them people thought could be legitimate superstars when coming into the NBA. So when you have two homegrown superstars like that under rookie deals, everybody was just wondering what the Sixers could actually do and if they could actually win a championship or multiple. The Sixers definitely put pretty good teams around both Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and they definitely made some noise in the playoffs while they were able to get there. But year after year, there was something that would just stop them from making it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals or making it all the way to the NBA Finals. But either it was the Milwaukee Bucks, the Toronto Raptors, Miami Heat, or any other team in the Eastern Conference, there was always that one done season after season. And a lot of people were questioning if Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid was a great fit together, because in the playoffs they got exposed a little bit. The play styles just didn't mesh that well, and questions started to arise that maybe the Sixers should actually trade either Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons at the time. And I think the real turning point was this previous playoffs. The Sixers this season, a lot of people may not realize this after their performance in the playoffs, but the Sixers actually were one of the best teams in the NBA during the regular season. They were the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. They had an amazing defense, maybe the best defense in the NBA. Obviously, Tobias Harris was absolutely going off. He was having an amazing season. Whenever the Sixers would be in a clutch situation and they needed a bucket, they could always turn to Tobias Harris and he would deliver. He was great for them. Ben Simmons was playing out of his mind during the regular season, not in terms of his offensive end, but in terms of his defensive ability. He was definitely one of the guys up there for Defensive Player of the Year. Same with Joel Embiid. He was an amazing defensive player. Also, he was great on the offensive end like he usually is. The Sixers obviously had Matisse Thybulle, who's an amazing defender as well. They were just a very well-rounded team that can get buckets, but also lock you down, and especially when it comes down to the clutch, they had those players that could really make it very difficult on the opposing team, and they were just a great defense overall. So this team especially, a lot of people thought the Sixers could finally break through and finally maybe make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe even the NBA Finals, and finally win an NBA championship. This team was so good on every level. There was really no area on their team where they really struggled, honestly. Great defensively, as I mentioned. Great offensively, like I mentioned before, and it seemed like Ben Simmons and Embiid were actually working out pretty well because Tobias Harris was on the team to really spread the floor out a little bit more. And overall, they just looked like a very complete team. But of course, the Sixers ended up losing to the Atlanta Hawks in the playoffs, and once again, the Sixers couldn't get the job done. And when they actually played the Atlanta Hawks, basically everybody expected the Sixers to win, so that makes it that much more disappointing. Obviously, there was so much frustration from both the Sixers players, organization, and fans about how they lost that series against the Atlanta Hawks, and they were so heavily favored. Basically, everybody thought they were going to win, as I mentioned. But on top of that, there was so much more frustration just due to the fact that Ben Simmons actually played in that series. Ben Simmons, honestly, throughout the entire playoffs, but especially in that series against the Atlanta Hawks, just looked awful. He looked like he lost all his confidence completely. He was passing up wide open layups, especially in that last game of that playoff series. He had that wide open layup that he passed up. He just had no confidence. The Hawks were sending Ben Simmons to the line every time. Ben Simmons was just missing free throws. It was so clear out there that he had no confidence. And I think at that point, after season of just not being able to win and people questioning if Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons could work together, after the Sixers lost that playoff series against Atlanta Hawks, and just based on how Ben Simmons was playing in that series, I think we'll see what happens, but I think it really should be over for Ben Simmons in Philadelphia at that point. And by the way, I don't think Ben Simmons is a bad player. I still think this guy could potentially definitely be a superstar in this league, and he has played like a superstar in years past. He just really needs to bring everything together. I have a lot of faith in Ben Simmons. Just the thing, I think you just wasted too many years with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid in Philadelphia. You never got the job done, and how can you expect it to work after years and years of not working? That's literally the definition of insanity, trying the same thing expecting a different result. And for the Sixers, they've been trying Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid for season after season now. So I think something has to budge, and I think, in my opinion, they would have to trade Ben Simmons at this point. When you just look at their game stylistically, when you're talking about Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, you can kind of tell that it doesn't work. Because yeah, Embiid can hit the catch and shoot three-point shot, and he can hit three-pointers, but when you're talking about a guy like that who's so skilled in the paint and the post, you don't want him to necessarily settle for those three-point shots, which sometimes he tends to do, and you really want to see him just completely dominate in that post area, whereas he's obviously his best stat. And for Ben Simmons, obviously he can't shoot. He doesn't even take 3-point shots. He has no confidence whatsoever that he won't even take it. So when you're talking about two guys that do their best work when driving to the basket, it doesn't necessarily work that well, and stylistically it doesn't mesh that well. But do I personally think that Ben Simmons is going to get traded pretty soon? After that playoff performance, I would have said yeah, I think he's going to get traded pretty soon during the offseason probably. But at this point, I still do think he should get traded and still think there's a decent chance he's going to get traded. But what puts me off is the fact that the Sixers, first of all, didn't trade him by now. But on top of that, the offer that the Sixers are looking for is absolutely ridiculous. They want 3 first-round picks and 2 very good young players who have the potential to be stars one day. And when you're talking about a guy like Ben Simmons, yeah, he definitely has a lot of value and he definitely could be a superstar in this league, and I think he's going to be very good for years to come. But you have to consider, Ben Simmons had an awful playoff performance and his value currently is at an all-time low. So asking for that kind of offer for a guy like Ben Simmons who had a terrible playoff performance, and that's the last thing that we've seen of Ben Simmons, I think is absolutely ridiculous, and the Sixers really have to change up their trade expectations. But where do I think Ben Simmons should go if he were to get traded? I think the best spot for Ben Simmons would be a team that doesn't necessarily have playoff expectations, so Ben Simmons can go in there with basically no pressure on his shoulders and just play his game and get back to what he did out of college and what made him such a great player coming out of college. In Philadelphia, obviously there's a ton of pressure on Ben Simmons' shoulders to first be able to shoot the ball. The Sixers want him to shoot so much, they're putting so much pressure on him, there's so much pressure from the fans. Obviously it's Philadelphia, a pretty big city. There's just a ton of pressure on Ben Simmons' shoulders, and I think overall it's just coming to be too much for him. And I think he just needs to go to a low pressure situation where he could just work in the... Do you think Ben Simmons should get traded from the Sixers, or do you think the Sixers should actually keep him? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe and hit that post notification bell. It really helps me out a lot. Until the next time, peace out, guys.